Okay.
Hey, I got my warning.
Oh, you got a warning? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. And first item is the agenda for the December 13th meeting, which is today. And does everybody approve the the minutes as presented?
You're talking about the agenda, Bob?
Sorry, the agenda. Sorry, yes.
Yes.
Sorry, let me pull that back up.
Go.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I can move that. Glynis.
I'll second it.
Okay. Carried. I guess we have some new members on our committee right now, and maybe Amy, I'm gonna let you take over a bit. My voice is starting to break up.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So I thought we could do just a quick round of introductions. And just for Ken and Glynis, we had met, had the orientation with Jeff and Kevin and Waverly last month, just to go through all the boring stuff. So we've had a chance to get to know each other, but you guys, of course, haven't met. So we can just go around and say a quick hello and a fun fact that you'd like to share about yourself. Otherwise, you can keep it all business. So maybe Glynis, you can go first.
Yeah, I'm Glynis Carling. I've lived in Canmore full-time for, I guess, just 3 years now. And struggling a bit for a fun fact, but I also serve the town on the library board. I guess that's fun.
That is fun. I think that's fantastic. Jeff, how about you go?
Jeff Ma, first term town councillor here. I also serve as the alternate on the library board with Glynis, which I met. This is the third time I think I've met Glynis virtually. And yeah, here we are chugging away. Very different boards, very different topics, but great folks in each one. So it'll be good.
All right, Ken.
I live here in Canmore. I've been here for about 3 years now. I moved here simply because my kids are close by. They're in Calgary, Airdrie, and in Leduc. Saves me driving 8 and 9 hours to Prince George. So, but I also ski downhill a lot, mountain bike, hike, and I'm retired. I'm busy being retired. That's the way it is. And being involved in the community is always something I've enjoyed doing. So it's always a pleasure meeting new people such as yourselves and just participating in improvement in the community.
Thanks, Ken. Kevin.
Well, like Ken, I'm retired. Been retired for about 5 years now. My background is in environment, and fun fact, I like mountain biking, and I'm a dog person, so I've got an English setter that loves to walk the trails of Canmore and Edmonton, where we're right now. We're part-time residents of Canmore, but hope to get down there permanently one of these days. So
That's wonderful. So Bob is our chair and has been our chair. I guess this is your second term now. And what I could say about Bob, he's an active volunteer. I know he's out there because I see him at the Nordic Center all the time. I don't know, Bob, I was trying to save your voice. Do you want anything you want to add?
Yeah, well, no, I do volunteer. I trail host at the Nordic Center both summer and winter. And I really like the skiing and the biking in town. I've been full time in the town for 6 years and retired, formerly from Calgary, and background in environmental consulting.
Excellent. And then, so I should just do a quick intro, mostly for Glynis and Ken. So you've seen me before as cameo appearances in these meetings when we're talking about climate change. And as you know, Lori departed from the town for a job at EcoTrust. So I've been covering her position since she's left and running this meeting. There is a process in place and they're just going through it to hire the new Lori. So hopefully, I was hoping by this meeting we'd have the new Lori, but we're going to go for next meeting. And so I may still pop in from time to time when it's discussing climate change, but it might be a different person. And then, yeah, I'm from Vancouver originally. I moved to Canmore in 2019 for this job. And I've been doing sustainability work, waste management work my entire career.
Nice. Has the position been filled already, Amy?
No, they're still hiring. So I think it's one of those any day now, any day. So it has not yet been filled.
All right, thank you. Just curious.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Excellent. Okay, so we have the agenda called to order. And it's kind of a weird order because we're supposed to approve the minutes next. But what I wanted to just do was quickly for Glynis and Ken's sake is just to highlight a couple of the things that we discussed at the orientation meeting, just to review, because it would have been a year since you guys had covered that information. So I was just going to stop sharing and then restart my sharing. Sorry. Apparently I have way too many windows open. So we covered the background, so the bylaw that governs ERC and the terms of reference that ERC is set out to do. So these are the official terms that are in the bylaw and the policies that guide us. But ultimately, there's the double role in reviewing and advising on environmental impact statements, and then providing kind of more generalized advice relating to our environmental strategies and supporting the execution. So we covered that, and then just wanted to highlight that it is appropriate and encouraged for members of ERC to bring issues forward. And these are just the guidelines for doing that, that should support and be aligned with the mandate of ERC. And that, you can raise all the issues, we might not be able to address them fully. And just the key questions is, does it support the mandate? And is it a town of Canmore responsibility? There's a lot of cross-jurisdictional issues and some things that we might not be able to tackle within our own jurisdiction. And Glynis, you'd asked this question as well, and I wanted to highlight it anyways, but in terms of the policies that guide this work, so when it says the Environmental Sustainability Action Plan and other strategies, these are the ones that we're speaking about. So what guides our work for climate change mitigation is our Climate Change Action Plan, which was approved. And so the dates, I'll just say the dates beside there are the dates that they were approved or last officially updated. So it's the Climate Change Action Plan, the Emergency Declaration. The Emergency Declaration actually has no specific targets or actions associated with, but it does help guide our work. We're also members of the Partners for Climate Protection and the Global Covenant of Mayors. So through those organizations, we actually have reporting responsibilities and tracking. So we have to have targets and we have to show how we're moving towards those targets, and we have to update our inventories to those groups on a frequent basis. And this is also, when I was hired with federal funding that was really specific to climate change mitigation. So the focus, maybe why it seems that climate change mitigation gets all the love, is because we had a staff person strictly dedicated to that work because of that federal funding. That, however, has since ended, and I am a permanent full-time Town of Canmore staff person. So my role can vary a bit. I can now focus on adaptation and resilience or other aspects of sustainability. And in terms of how we adapt to a changing climate is our adaptation and resilience plan. So that hasn't been updated since 2016. And then in the Environmental Sustainability Action Plan was our kind of first effort at it. It hasn't been updated since 2013. It governs or it has policy related to water conservation, waste reduction, and toxin reduction. It did include energy and climate protection targets and actions, but those have been superseded by the climate change action plan, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because if we decided, for example, that we wanted to move away from the environmental sustainability action plan or end its mandate, those 3 areas would not be covered by any specific policy: the water conservation, the waste reduction, and toxin reduction, because they're not addressed by other plans that we currently have. Yes.
My specific question about the environmental sustainability action plan is whether there is a scheduled update or any thought around reviewing the targets and actions for those 3 areas that aren't covered elsewhere.
Yeah, nothing scheduled at this time. How it's been reported on in the past is through the Public Works annual report. Because these specific areas had more to do, like it's really within the public works sphere, because solid waste falls under public works, toxins were really parks and how we apply herbicides. And that falls under public works, and the water utilities were also under public works. So every year when they did their annual report, they would report out on how they were proceeding on their environmental sustainability action plan targets. So that was the only way that we were reporting. So we've been doing that to date, but there isn't a scheduled update or specific environmental sustainability plan planned for at this point. But I think we should discuss this at a future meeting, because it is kind of this plan that is a bit dormant besides reporting out through the public works. And it's not, at the beginning, it was more spread throughout the organization because we were members of the natural step, and there was certain staff education that went along with that, but that's since kind of fallen by the wayside.
And I would maybe suggest that municipal water quality stewardship might also be considered, given events.
Yeah. Like with a turbidity issue this summer, yeah. Because I think water, I'd have to look at that again. Because it really has to do a lot with water conservation as opposed to drinking water quality. But
that isn't covered elsewhere unless it's covered under, again, public works, I guess.
It would be a public works, like it was part of the utility, because they have very specific, stringent requirements that they have to read, which is what triggers the boil water advisory. But if you're wondering about that, I can try to find that out for next time. And then we can also make note of your comments about water quality potentially being included in a potential update. But I think this is a worthy future ERC discussion. Okay, and then in terms of human-wildlife coexistence, the 2 documents that guide most of the work is the Human-Wildlife Coexistence Report. That is a multi-stakeholder report, so that guides kind of Bow Valley-wide organizations. And then the Wildlife Attractant Management Plan was really specific to the town of Canmore. And then the council's strategic priorities, which have yet to be set. So those are the big things that this team, being me and the new Lori, work on. Oh yeah, I'm going to save this one for later. So I'm going to stop sharing. All right. Does anybody have any other questions about kind of what was covered, or Bob or Kevin or Jeff, do you want to add anything to what we had covered last time we met?
Just that last point about council priorities, when do they get developed?
Well, I can speak towards that. So there are council priorities that are carried from the past council, and that moves through. But what happens is, coming in February of 2022, the new council undergoes a big process of strategic planning. Okay, and so there we begin to set the mandate for the next 4 years. And as a loose aside, I'm pretty darn confident from this current council that sustainability and those initiatives will be a big part of it all. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay, thanks. Great. Bob, I'll hand it back to you for the approval of the minutes from last meeting.
Okay, so the existing or the older members or the existing members of the previous session would have had the minutes circulated probably in October. And I would just like to see if anybody's got any changes to the minutes, or can we approve the minutes right now? So I guess it would be up to Glynis or Ken to move that we adopt the minutes as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay.
You beat me too, Dennis.
And all in favor, that's all three of us. Okay, carried. I'm going to turn it back to you, Amy.
Great.
For unfinished business.
Okay. I checked with the manager of planning and development about environmental impact statements to see if we had any that we should be anticipating. And the answer was none on the horizon at this point. So we'll let you know when we do, but yeah, you guys can like rest assured that your Christmas vacation will not be spent looking at environmental impact statements. So that one is done. This one's going to be a big one for the group. So as discussed at both the September 13th meeting, as well as we touched base on it, we went over it when we met and did the orientation with the new members. There has been the request to add climate change mitigation, climate change impacts, and traditional ecological knowledge and historical and archaeological resources to the scope of the EIS policy, as well as IRC providing input on the terms of reference. So the returning members had worked with Lori to redline or provide the suggested updates to the actual policy. And so the advice that I had coming out of that was to prepare a memo to send to our manager or general manager of municipal infrastructure. So that's Whitney Smithers. She is my boss's boss. So she is responsible for public works, planning and development, facilities, engineering. And so that she needs to be updated on this work and to try to get her support for the kind of the internal support to move forward on this and to get her advice on next steps. So what I wanted to do, what I thought might be kind of a good use of your time, was to show you the outline that I've prepared for that memo and get your input on it, and to see if the members had additions or changes or there are specific items that should be included in this memo. So I can pull that up and get your thoughts on that. Okay. So the intent of the memo is to give the background to her, bring her up to speed on the conversations that have been happening to date, but as well kind of outline some of the implications of doing this work, the next steps, and expected outcomes, and then get her, ultimately, my thinking is that the ultimate ask from this memo is to get her advice on next steps, because I believe we'll have to go to council to request that they request us to do this work. And then she also needs to support the staff time required to do this work, as well as the kind of general scope. So that is my thought for doing that memo. But I have laid it out such that we'll start with the background, and what I wanted to get from you guys was to make sure that there's nothing in here that I'm missing that you will want to see in here. And in particular, some of the history behind this and the rationale for wanting to include these things in the EIS policy. So having an understanding from this group on that to make sure that I have that embedded in here is important, and then we can go through some of the other things. So I thought we could just spend a little bit of time going through that. We have 15 minutes according to the agenda that I put together. So we have a bit of time. So does this work for you guys? So I can just kind of leave it up here, and then I was thinking we could do the raise hands function, or I can actually see you guys all on the screen, so you could physically raise your hand and you could just throw some thoughts at me and I'll edit it right on the screen. Glynis.
I can start us off just on the timeline. The original request was actually quite a bit earlier than September.
Yes.
It was, I think, the first EIS review that I participated in with the comments for that. We'd started talking about it. Is that not right, Bob? I'd have to go back through my notes, which I don't have in front of me, to check the timing. But Bob, maybe it's top of mind for you or Ken.
Well, I just remember we were, especially with the Three Sisters ones.
Yeah.
I think we saw the original ones in July or August, and then it got pulled, and then they got separated and then submitted again. And it happened just around Christmas time, if I recall, last year. And we were given, I believe, 10 days or less to review them both. My understanding is correct. And
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
had to fight pretty hard to get 4 weeks
Right.
Out of the town. So I think there needs to be something in the EIS documents that there's a certain timeline to process these
Right.
reports, and that's very standard in all the other applications I used to do for other government agencies. They would have a minimum timeline of, it could be 60 days.
Yeah.
But 4 weeks, even with 4 weeks, it was a big stretch for the committee to get through that. And especially for the people that aren't retired, like us retired people, we can sit in our chairs and our rocking chairs and read it. But that was a ton of information to get through, and then it was times 2, because a lot of it was repetitious, but it was uniquely designed for each of the separate applications, separate EISs. So you couldn't just say, okay, it's a cookie cutter, we're just going to see this in the second report. And it was an awful lot of work for the committee. And so in all fairness, I don't think anybody who submits an application should expect a quick turnaround.
Right.
The other thing I think happened is that we didn't even get the reports until the third party reviewer had finished, because I got the impression that there was a lot of information that Lori was aware of from the third party reviewer that she had before we got the reports to review. So I would like to understand the flow of how those are distributed as well.
Okay. So this is less to do with the additions, but more about concerns around the process and having a reasonable timeline that is respectful of the volunteer committee, and clear understanding of the process and at what point you are seeing these and are able to have input.
Right.
I summarize that, because that's okay. That's a separate thing, but I can note it.
And I certainly think that there's no reason to hold back on anything. We shouldn't have to. If the third party reviewer has it, we should get it at about the same time, in my mind.
Okay.
No, on that, Bob, I think we should actually see it after the third parties had a chance to review it, because then we can have a review and also refer back to them. And I found that quite helpful. The Three Sisters one was 600 some odd pages. It was, it was huge, and we had, less than 4 weeks to review it. Yet the South Canmore one was quite a bit smaller, quite a bit easier to do as well. But I think the timeline of 60 days would be from the time we get it, not from the time Canmore gets it, because it just really puts a crunch on us if it's a big process or a big document like Three Sisters. And I suspect we'll see more of those.
I think there should be a minimum timeline, and we can, if we finish it early, if it's a smaller EIS, we can say,
Yes.
we can knock this off in a week. But when it's something like Three Sisters, then it would go to the maximum amount of allowable time.
Yeah, that was a real dinosaur, that third horse, whatever you want to call it. It was huge. And being, first thing I got thrown into the fire here, the frying pan was that document. And that was huge.
Yeah.
So do we know,
Thanks, Bob.
sorry, Bob or Ken, do we know how long the third-party reviewer had for the Three Sisters documents?
No, and that's why I'd like to clarify
Okay.
this, how this
Okay.
timeline works. I just got the impression from Lori or the previous Amy that they had it for some time before we
Quite
got
some time.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Bob, it was somewhere around, 6 weeks that they had it,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden we got a month to review it.
Well, we
Yeah.
were actually given 10 days. I had to fight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
right.
I would submit that 10 days is an insult, but
Well,
That
that's
is actually done tactically by the proponent.
Yeah.
well, it was a very heated discussion to get to 4 weeks, I'll tell you.
I bet.
Okay, so the concern, I just want to go back to your point, Bob. So are you concerned about IRC seeing it at the same time or before the third party reviewer because of the content, or was it more of timing? So to Ken's point, as long as IRC had it and had the 60 days, that would be fine, even if it was after the third party review?
Yeah, well,
Or is it important to you that you see it before the third party review?
well, I'm not sure if that's if 60 days is the timeline for the proponent, but if it is, what's the reason to hold it back from the committee? Like, if you're going to give it to the third party reviewer, why not give it to the committee at the same time? I just don't see why there should be any delay. At least, it speeds up the whole town process of this if we get it all at the same time. Then
Right.
there's none of this panic at the end of the process for IRC has to review this. We can review it in the same timeline that the third party reviewer is, and I think that there's no reason why we can't.
Right.
And,
Bob, did you find the third party review of assistance when you reviewed it? Because I certainly did.
well,
And that's what
I did to some degree, but we found a lot of other things that they never mentioned. Like they got strictly into the biology, and we were looking at it, I think, more holistically. And I think our review was, I think, a little more robust than theirs. Theirs was very strong on certain things, but it was all related to the biology more than anything else.
Yeah, I think a lot has to be said with the members on the committee at that time and the diversity that we had, the members, which really contributed to our review and the amount of information we provided as compared to the third party. But I found the third party quite helpful.
Yeah, well, it doesn't stop us from getting the third party review and then comparing it after
Right.
we got
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
as well. It would be supplemental for sure.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay,
Bob,
so what I'll do, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say the only potential issue with seeing it at the same time as the third party review, my understanding is that there was some iteration between the third party reviewer and the proponent. So the third party reviewer provided some preliminary comments, the proponent did some revisions, and then the third party reviewer completed their review. That is my impression. So that might introduce some additional work for us because we might have reviewed a document and then need to review a revised document.
Yeah, I'd be okay, Glynis, with them giving us the final document, after the input, but the clock shouldn't start ticking
Right.
until we got the final document.
Right, yeah, okay.
Right. And then, sorry, the 60 days, I thought I heard from one of you guys.
Well, I
is
just
that
threw it
a
out
time?
I threw it out as an example, Amy. I'm not sure what the time. I'm
Yeah.
not even sure
Yeah.
if there is a timeline in the
Is there a
EIS
minimum?
policy.
Okay. What would you guys like? So if I throw this out and say, let's establish a minimum timeline for these people who are volunteering their time, and this is what the committee feels is appropriate for to have a minimum for a large one. And to your point, if it's a small one, we can expedite it. But do you feel like in the case, if we had another Three Sisters, what would have been an appropriate amount of time for you guys?
For me, Amy, the 60 days is quite a reasonable timeline. I think you'd have to talk to some people who have full-time jobs from the committee versus us who are retired and have the opportunity to review it. But I think in my experience in working in various organizations, that 60 days for something like this is quite reasonable.
Right.
But I guess
Anybody else want to
it
have
it
some
would
input on
depend
that?
on, it would depend on what's in the policy right now. If the proponent has an expectation right now based on the policy, then we either have to adjust the policy or live within the policy.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if there is a, you know, you'll have your review done by X number of days. If that's not in the policy, maybe it should be put in.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm not saying I just threw 60 days out as an
Yeah.
example, but for some, as I say, a smaller project might be, you know, a couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
like I
else-
don't believe the intention of ERC here is to drag their feet on anything. They just
No,
need
no.
to have the cushion
No.
of time to like to do a proper job and diligence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So as an
Maybe
action
if we
item,
say
we can
some-
clarify what is in the policy. If there is a timeline specified in the policy.
Or maybe something like an agreement that up to 60 days, you know, something like that to leave it open.
Mhm.
But anyways.
Yeah.
It would be
Great.
good to know what's in the policy.
Okay. So what I suggest is that we talk about this for another 3 minutes, and then if there's time at the end, we can come back to this one because this will be a work in progress. But I will, you know, keep soldiering on with this one. So in terms of the other things, so Glynis, at the same time as all this was going on is when the need or the recognition that climate change was an omission from this otherwise very comprehensive environmental impact report. Is that fair to say? So during the time of the Three Sisters review is
Yeah,
kind of when
yeah.
it first
First
was
one,
highlighted
which-
that this was missed. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just say at this time it was identified by members. So in addition to the issues with the timeline, it was identified by members that it was just climate change at the time, or had you guys also identified that we were also omitting historical and archaeological resources and traditional ecological knowledge?
I'd have to look back, but my recollection is that it was climate change.
Okay.
Rob and Ken, is that right? Yeah.
yeah, I think that was the big focus. And
Yeah.
the historical.
And I've just made myself a note to double check and I can send you the minutes from.
Oh yeah, I can.
Got them all, but
Glynis, what I'll do is I'll check the minutes,
Okay.
not to make you do extra work. And if I can't find it, but I just wanted to make sure I kind of got your guys' perspective because
Yeah.
minutes also are like little excerpts, but okay. And then, so sorry, that was a comma before September 13th, because I know the discussion started earlier, but then the first time that we actually kind of moved on it was that meeting where we
Right.
sat down and
no,
looked
there
at
had
the
been a
policy.
red line earlier.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no, Amy, it's been around for quite a while, and this whole thing's getting very long in the tooth.
So
and that's why I
Originally,
wrote
it brought up last Christmas, we're thinking, and then it got discussed at another couple meetings. And then when it had the redlining that I saw that was attached to those minutes, that took place in September.
yeah, but the redlining or the proposal, I think, you know, it might see it in the minutes a year
Mhm.
ago, at least.
Previous redline. Okay, cool. I just wanted to give an indication of when the discussion started, because I take your point, Bob, that this has been a lengthy discussion
Yeah.
and we're not moving
Rick
on it.
Daniel actually proposed wording for a change, an amendment
Okay.
to the policy and the bylaw, and that will be attached to a set of
Daniel.
minutes as well.
Okay, great. Okay. And then the September 13th, I believe that's when the archaeological and historic resources, traditional ecological knowledge,
think that's
and climate change impacts got added.
Right.
My impression, the previous discussions were all just around what is the contribution of this project to global climate change. Is that correct?
Glynis, I'm going to refer.
Yeah, I'm testing my memory here, Amy. I think the emphasis on the impacts did probably come in September, but
Right.
yeah.
That's what I kind of thought.
And
Okay, so-
previously it was contribution to
Yeah, it was really focused just on
emissions.
the greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I'm going to move us on, but I just want to mention that the other things that I'm thinking about for including, I will need to show how this is different than our sustainability screening report. And then what I'll have to do is just outline kind of the impacts. So the folks that will need to consult during this process. And that's the important one that I don't want to make sure that I miss anybody. So I'll leave that with you to sit with. And then if we have some time at the end, we can come back to it. And if not, then we can follow up via email. And if there's any thoughts that you guys have, I'll send this out. And if there's any thoughts, you guys just can just fire them my way. And if, and specifically, it's the who needs to be consulted as part of this.
Amy, can I just add a point here on this one? There is a fair amount of discussion around the wildlife corridor and habitat component, which is actually the province's responsibility. But yet we have no idea how they came up with it and what the impacts were in relation to wildlife habitat corridors. Because once you put a subdivision in, you change the ecosystem, you change the habitat, and you've really impacted wildlife in a key corridor such as Three Sisters.
Okay, I'm just gonna note that. Sorry, Jeff, I saw you had your hand up as well.
Just tying back towards like some of the other parts under archaeological and historic impacts, do we need to also apply the word indigenous to be a little more specific under that lens? Yeah.
And that would be specifically for, sorry, the archaeological and historic or traditional
yeah.
indigenous ecological knowledge?
You could apply it to both if you like.
Okay.
Like comma, yeah.
Great. On 3 and 4, okay. Sorry. Thanks, guys. I know this is awkward to try to edit by committee, but I want you to make sure that I have your input into this if it's going up to the boss. Okay, but we don't have understanding. Is this statement, can you read it? Okay, and is it fair, a summation of what you said?
It is kind of, or just the wording needs to be cleaned up. The intent is there, I think.
Okay.
It's understanding of the decision of how they came up with their wildlife corridors.
Great. Okay.
And the other part is, do we have any input into the process? As council or as the ERC committee?
Of them.
That's an interesting perspective on that sort of stuff, because a lot of times people will default and say like the province dictates the wildlife corridor.
Yes.
But I do feel that is like a baseline thing, but I feel that we as a committee, and I'd like to believe that we as a council should also have some jurisdiction beyond the the hard defined corridor part if we feel that there's like additional value to that.
I agree with you, Jeff, but in the case from Three Sisters, we had zero input.
I know.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm just going to save this.
We also, the sordid history of how that whole thing got designated too. I don't know if you're there for that one particular meeting down at Town Hall way back before COVID started, but yeah.
Yeah, this is not one that we are going to solve in this short of time, but I want to note that, so I'm going to include that in the minutes. Okay, I just want to move on to the next one. So at the orientation that we had a great discussion. And one of the things that came up, and I think, partly it was due to a question that Waverly had. So Waverly actually is a consultant and she's got great experience working with Indigenous communities. And we were discussing some questions that she had about basically how the town reaches out and works with local Indigenous communities. And when we're engaging with them, what kind of resources do we provide, or do we provide some support to engage with us? Because she had seen in the past consultants contacting First Nations for traditional ecological knowledge, but the workload involved in that was quite high. So basically that question led to a discussion about whether, how we should move forward in this area, and some questions that we had for the lead at the town who is working on Indigenous relations. So I was hoping to bring her out to this meeting and have her discuss where the town is at with our truth and reconciliation work, and how we will be engaging with our neighbors. But she wasn't able to do so. She was just super taxed with budget stuff and was unavailable tonight, but she said that she could come to a meeting in January. So what I wanted to do was prepare for that and make sure that we have a meaningful discussion and prepare her ahead of time with what questions we might have, so she knows those in advance. So I thought we could spend a few minutes collecting some questions that we might have on that subject. So one of the things that she did say when she said that she couldn't meet with us today was that she said, just to warn you, the Stoney admin have indicated that they are not at this time interested in providing traditional ecological knowledge studies. She said, I'm happy to give ERC an update on our efforts, but wanted to give you the heads up that managing expectations of efforts to advance truth and reconciliation quickly is challenging, at the same time as trying to be respectful of what the Stoney Nakoda are interested in and have the resources to provide. So that was her kind of message back to us in the meantime, but she's not, when she said that she couldn't come. So in light of that, I just wanted to prep the questions that we might have for her when we bring her out to our next meeting.
Amy, just a quick question for you. In relation to the First Nations archaeological assessments, is there a provincial framework that is used as to the level of assessments? Because I know in BC, where I worked, as provincial governments, there was a process there, and there was a key date, and I think it was 1856 or 1854, something like that, that anything before that was archaeological significant, and a full archaeological assessment had to be done versus, just an overview. Do you know of anything like that?
I don't.
Can I have some experience on that? And
Okay.
it's certain. I'm not sure exactly if there's any dates specifically, but there is usually for large projects. There's a mandated archaeological assessment in Alberta required anytime there's ground disturbance.
Okay.
And in terms of TEK studies, my experience has been that it's dependent on the region involved, and studies have ranged in scope and from a walk around with elders to a detailed report. So
it comes up to the question: how does that impact ERC? This whole process of archaeological assessment and reviews, or does it?
Well, I think that I think we highlighted that with the Three Sisters. There was a lack of Indigenous consultation, and I think that I don't know where else it would fall in the review of if it's in an EIS. That's where it gets captured. So I think that sort of becomes under our purview. I don't know where else it would happen in an application to the town for development.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say that maybe that's a good question for the general manager and with respect to the town's reconciliation efforts. Who is expected to oversee that obtaining and incorporating that kind of input, because it isn't just a matter of having a traditional ecological knowledge study. It's making sure that the development reflects the results of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the whole process, there's also a relationship that has to be built with First Nations. And I think that's really kind of the city's responsibility, so that we can work under their guidance, I guess.
Okay, so for specific questions, what I'm going to ask or put on the list that I send her ahead of time is who is expected to oversee Indigenous consultation, and how do we make sure that this is reflected appropriately by the developer? Is that, did I capture that properly, Glynis? Okay, awesome. Because I think that's fair. And I think, Bob, kind of where you were going is, if not the EIS policy, in its desired updated form, where is that captured? So at what point through our planning process and policies and requirements are we asking for this?
Yeah, you don't want to create more bureaucracy for this, I don't think. And I'm not, certainly in my career, that was usually the purview of the environmental consultant, was to do the environmental consultation and traditional environmental knowledge. The other thing that you made allusions to, the fact that the Stoney Nakoda don't wish to share their traditional environmental knowledge, and that's not unusual. They tend to keep that confidential in many cases, but that doesn't mean you can't still consult with them on something specific, if outside of their traditional environmental knowledge study area, or you can get even a verbal consultation with them, and that's still valid.
Outside. So the question is,
this brings up a quick question: is can we interact with First Nations, or is that strictly the town that's interacting with them? Do we go? Is that the chain of command, if you wish?
Ken, I think it's the proponent that usually is the one that's required to do the consultation.
Yeah, but in relation to if we have questions in the process, a lot of times the proponent does only, the proponent only does certain amounts, and then all of a sudden we have a bunch of questions. I guess, do we go back to the proponent or the council or town, or do we go to First Nations to get that clarity?
Yeah, well, that's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
This person. Yeah.
Can you guys see my notes, or is it still showing the agenda?
Notes.
Okay, cool. I never know. Every platform is different with how you can kind of slide into the screen share. And also, it's only when people are watching you type that you forget how to spell.
Actually, we're seeing the previous agenda notes, not this agenda item, but the.
Oh, okay, so what I'm typing right
policy.
now, you're not seeing what I'm typing right now? Okay.
No.
Great. I'll stop sharing and reshare. Okay, well, I am, sorry, I'm just going to double check our timing on the agenda, and then till 4:50. Oh, okay, we have one more minute. Maybe I won't share. Just trust me, I'm taking these notes because it'll take me a minute to screen share, and they'll be in the minutes anyway. And then you guys will have an opportunity to. You can send me a few. What I'll do is I'll probably propose a deadline of getting questions to her, and then we'll send that ahead.
Yeah, it's a challenging time to communicate with the Stoney Nakoda right now, just given all the things that have happened recently. They have significant demands on their time from a lot of different groups trying to kind of get a piece of information from them. Having said that, I think it's imperative that we continue to keep reaching out, even if we're not getting immediate communication or response, just to have that symbol, just like that symbolically, just keep reaching out. And yeah, if anyone has any personal relationships with the Stoney Nakoda, I would encourage leveraging them and building those as we move forward. And when we do hit a situation where we might need to kind of get some insight in a timely way, because yeah, the process is slow. It can be really quite slow to the point where it's so slow. Yeah. It's valued. It's just slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just letting Ralph in. Hello, Ralph. Can you hear okay? think he's multitasking. Okay, so Ralph driving. Ralph, I apologize if you were waiting a long time in the wait room. I keep losing my participant kind of sidebar. So if you were sitting in the waiting room, I'm sorry. And also welcome to the meeting, and I hope you are driving safely. Okay. Okay, so for this one, next steps is I am going to do what I just said. So I will send these questions out, and then I'll figure out a date, and then we'll have a cutoff, and you guys can add questions. And then we'll send those to Sally. It's Sally Cotta, who's our general manager of community services, who is the lead on this file. So we'll send it to her ahead of time, and then hopefully we'll have a great discussion in January. I think it'll be really interesting, and she's got great. She's doing great work.
Amy, if we can just,
Yes.
you know, those questions can be added to just when we circulate the minutes.
Yeah.
And people can make additional put additional questions in there.
And great. All right. Okay, so Bob proposed that we have a break at 5. So what we're going to do is go through the next agenda item, and then if you guys need a little bio break or a stretch break, we can have a quick break at, I think it's 4:05 that will end up, or 5:05, sorry, that we'll end up having a break. So are you guys okay for another 15 minutes to power through the next item? Yeah? Okay, good. So this one is, I'll stop sharing and I'll reshare my screen here. Hold up. So Bob had asked a previous question when we were coming up with the agenda for this meeting about some wildlife related questions. So there was questions around essentially, so I'm going to paraphrase Bob, but you can jump in. So I have your email.
Actually, Amy, I can try this if I.
All right, do it.
I put these items on the agenda for a couple of reasons. Number one, there was I'm not sure if it was a historical high of bears relocated because of fruit trees this summer, but I thought that was quite disturbing in the whole light of the fact that the town prides itself on being a wild smart community, and that if you look at the concern that we had about wildlife with the Three Sisters applications, and the current fruit tree policy doesn't seem to be working very well, in that we just encourage people to get rid of their trees, and to have 11 bears relocated this year, I think is a little excessive. It's not saying it's certainly going against our wild smart branding that we seem to be so proud of here. So I wanted to bring that up. And the second item is the off-leash dogs. And Glynis and Ken, you guys have seen numerous EISs where everybody talks about one of the big issues is off-leash dogs. And they always kick it back to the town, saying it's not our responsibility. The town needs to come up with a plan for this. Obviously, our off-leash dog policy, again, is not working very effectively. And again, if we talk about being a wild, smart community, then maybe just I think we need to have a discussion about that as a committee to see if there's anything that we can bring to the attention of the town to take stronger action on both of these issues. Any comments from anybody?
Well, I just had the few things going through up my mind here right now. Is there something that we should maybe put together for council to consider, or for the city to consider in relation to the policy? Is that within our mandate? Or is it just to say environmentally it's impacting wildlife in a negative way? Specifically say dogs off leash or for fruit trees that's affecting bears and identifying some key points in it, or do we kind of help write the policy?
Well, I think that we should at least bring it to the attention of the council, and that we consider it a concern. There is the Biosphere Institute that could be able to supply us some maybe information and advice. There may be other sources or resources that can be tapped by the town to help them review the policy. I don't know if we have the expertise on our committee to develop the policy. I think what I would be concerned about is just drawing it to the attention of council so that it becomes a higher priority for them to address. Jeff, any comments?
I guess I maybe worded that incorrectly. I wouldn't suggest writing the policy, but help provide some framework so that they can develop the policy within the town responsibility.
Yeah. On my end, a couple of pieces there. I do feel Nick DeRuyter from WildSmart would be also a helpful resource in this part of coming up with information. This is one of those things where the policy is the policy, it's the enforcement which is non-existent, sort of thing. Like that's really at the end of the day, that's what's going on the bylaw side of things. There really isn't a well, as I look here, we have 8 citations, 24 warnings, right, sort of thing. And compared to the scope of the magnitude of the problem, it's not really affecting that sort of change. Part of it is, I think, from a bylaw perspective, is getting that staffed up and trying to understand like what's happening there. And actually, like, I don't know whether it's like prioritizing or incentivizing or what, or letting those bylaw guys know that this is a thing that we need to start chipping away at. I do know we're in this interesting situation right now where on the bylaw side with Greg, he's like splitting his role apart. So like one, like just because like bylaw struggles with so many things, whether it's like parking, the fruit trees, like when we talk about off-leash dogs, et cetera, like they plus all that stuff, Greg is splitting his job so that one person is going to kind of shift off solely into bylaw, and hopefully that will actually see a change as well. While the other piece is working more on the emergency management side of things, which is a totally different part of the conversation. Also, with respect to the bylaw, they've also been really challenged with keeping people hired and like staffing that. I think it takes a special kind of person to be a bylaw person to, and then also when you find that person, even if they're motivated, depending on where their training cycle is, it takes a bit of time to spin them up to the point where they're actually able to like do their job effectively and actually write the certain citations that they're allowed to write. So I don't think it's a bad idea to keep flagging this to council. Absolutely. Because then, you know, that continues to keep pressure and like get bylaw working on their side of things. There's lead time with this, which is disappointing from all those pieces, from a staffing and equipping them for the training and then keeping those staff. Yeah. But, you know, a lot of times the default the thing is like education. What's Eric's thoughts on that? Because I think a lot of people know it. The idea in principle, when it comes to like affecting that action in their own personal life choices, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I will add to what Jeff said because I had an email from Greg and he just wanted to share that they were down in staff last year and they just weren't able to dedicate the resources to fruit tree education and enforcement. So they said, you know, if we get the officers that we want to get, and to Jeff's point, can hire them and fill those positions and keep those positions, they do want to make a more concerted effort for both off-leash dogs and fruit trees to be more proactive. But it's a resourcing issue in terms of the ability to enforce. But yeah, do you guys want to spend a couple minutes chatting about?
If they could get a commission for every ticket they wrote, they'd be living pretty comfortable.
Well, yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah.
But because part of what I wanted to do is I recognize that we're not going to be able to have a fulsome discussion at this meeting on this because this is it's a big hairy thing. But instead just flag some of the issues that we might want to do, because part of it was some of the questions that Bob asked would take me a bit of work to actually get answers for. And I feel that we need to have somebody with wildlife expertise come speak to Is this us failing as a community because there were 11 bears removed, or, are there bigger issues? Because I know part of the issues with all the bears coming down is because of the conditions which created food scarcity in their actual habitat where they should be. So it's a bigger issue. So I would like to have a wildlife person speak to that, as opposed to just me. So we could get somebody in, like Nick, at our next meeting, if you guys would like to kind of chat more about with somebody who has that expertise. And we could also include a discussion on, the value of education. Is that an approach we want to put kind of more effort into, or is it just like, let's get people out there ticketing, and what Irk's thoughts are on that? I don't know, is that, Jeff, is that kind of where you were going with that question?
Yeah, and I feel like these are all critical things, and what Bob highlights, these are a big deal, and just to continue to put them up on the council side, we're not going to solve this like right now at the top, but it's definitely, I would agree with Bob that the outcomes we had this last year were unacceptable, right? We're not really walking the walk as a community. So
Yeah, this isn't something we're gonna solve in this meeting. It was one of those things I wanted to put on as an objective for basically the committee this year. So we will have lots of opportunity to just slide this into another meeting.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of testing, are we the right group to discuss that and ask the questions about that? And from our terms of reference, one of our activities is to advise on protective management measures or mitigative measures that may be needed for specific environmental policy areas. So I think getting us more informed by having Nick or somebody else come to talk to us about it, and then we may be in a position to advise a change of focus or maintaining the focus and getting the additional enforcement action in place. So I think it is appropriate for this committee.
Yeah, I would agree that it falls within the mandate. So, and a good question too, because again, it's the same thing. Like, so if not us, like what is the committee, and who are the folks advising council that would do this? So.
Amy, just a quick question for you and the committee members. In field management, does that fit into our realm, our scope of responsibilities, or wildlife habitat enhancement, that sort of thing?
For like our scope of responsibilities is the environmental sustainability action plan and other environmental issues. So this loosely falls into that. But in terms of fuel management and fire smarting and improving habitat, like it's not specifically listed in our mandate. But
yeah, no, it's interesting. I had a good field trip in relation to the burning aspect, because I've got a lot of experience in that in forestry, and we had a good walkthrough just up on Benchline Drive and behind there, and it was a really good work. But his difficulty is getting funding to do that. But if we can go up further up the hill to enhance, to fire smart the wilderness area as well, but increase habitat at the same time, I think that's something maybe we could look at or consider as a committee.
Okay. All right. So what I'll do is I'll note this in the minutes and just say that, this is an important issue to Irk, and it is appropriate, and perhaps like the outcome of future discussions is to decide, as a committee, what is our advice to council and what are our concerns that we can outline to council. Does that seem reasonable? Oh, yeah, Kevin, did you say something? Sorry, you're on mute, nice, but I saw your mouth move.
And I'm sorry I was muted. I agree, it sounds good.
Okay. Sorry. And then it actually is a really good segue to our next agenda item, but we're going to take a break. So if you guys want to take 5 minutes, we can come back and jump into that one because it actually is relevant to this discussion. Excellent. Okay, thanks, team. See you in 5 minutes. That's 10 after on my clock.
Mhm.
Yeah, here we are.
There we go.
Welcome back.
Just enough time to feed the dog.
Yeah. Oh, good. Is the dog ever going to have a little cameo in one of our meetings?
If he comes up and sits in his favorite leather chair.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so I'm hoping Ralph is back, but I'll jump back into it. The next piece was a discussion about officially reporting to council. So ERC is kind of different than some of the other committees because they have a very formalized role and formalized way in which they advise council. Whereas ERC, the only way that you currently are communicating to council is through your comments on whether the EISs that go forward meet the terms of reference. So there is no continual or official kind of ERC presence. So I think Bob had brought that up as something that's potentially problematic, and we may want to have more of a presence or a report back to council on our activities or other questions, concerns. So it kind of relates to the past discussion is, if you have want to highlight concerns or advice or suggestions about wildlife related issues, what is the mechanism to do that to council? So we wanted to have a discussion about that. Bob, do you want to add anything to my paraphrasing of your?
Well, no, I think you captured it pretty well, but we are a review and advisory committee, and the only time we've really sent a letter to council is when we've done a review of an EIS. And just going through the agenda here, we've highlighted some things that we feel are important to us as a committee that we want to explore further. And rather than them just become discussions of interest for ourselves, I think that we need to advise council on some of these issues. We're a community-based committee, and so we do represent some of the community concerns, as well as having some expertise in the field. So I think it would be very beneficial to the council to make them aware of some of the concerns that we see. And they've got so many things on their plate, so we can take the time to highlight some of the concerns that they may not be seeing in their everyday their workaday subjects that they're dealing with on an ongoing basis. And it might even be similar to the discussion we had previously on the changes, the amendments to the bylaw and the EIS policy for our committees. Is that it's been sitting with the town for over a year now, some of these issues, and I'm just wondering if maybe a direct approach to council on some of those issues might get them moving a little faster than having them crawl through the bureaucratic process within the town.
Great. And so just to add to that, prior to this meeting, I did check with the clerk's office, and the thought was that kind of probably the simplest and easiest way to do that was through committee of the whole meetings. So those are the ones where they're taking reports for information. So it's not a request for a decision that council has to vote on, but it is more of an information update format for the committee of the whole meetings. And those happen once a month. So that's what the advice that I had was that would probably was felt to be the most appropriate and kind of simplest. Otherwise, we have to bring staff reports forward with requests for decisions, and it's a bit different. And in those instances, we may still want to do that on an issue that ERC brings up or ERC provides advice on, but it has to be really specific, if that makes sense. So for example, if we wanted to say that relating to the update to the policy, that we had are asking for a council decision on updating the EIS policy, that would go as a request for decision, but it would have ERC input on it. Whereas if you wanted to provide some thoughts, concerns, advice on other issues in kind of a broader sense, that those would be more appropriate to the CAL meetings. Anyways, I just wanted to provide that. But let's open it up and see what the other members think about Bob's thought about, do we want to take this, couple times a year, once a year, but have council hear directly from the members. Liz has a hand up. Go.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and it also allows requests and information in the other direction from council to the committee, which is also part of our mandate to address other issues on the request of council. And I'm not aware that that's happened because we're probably not so much top of mind, except when there's an EIS being reviewed. And so I would think, and it might only be once a year, maybe twice a year, but having some visibility in front of council not related to EIS is, I think, a good idea.
I believe the council would support that. Yeah, like we always love having more information, especially if it's from like a group such as you guys, which actually have like the defined, expertise stuff. I think the committee of the whole thing is also a good thing that we should maintain as a practice. It doesn't have to be every single committee of the whole. We don't have something, but I'm happy to put those into our committee of the whole reports that we receive. And then, yeah, being visible in that sort of way, speaking a couple of times or as need be would be appreciated. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jeff, on that. So do you think it would be appropriate, maybe ERC members don't come as a delegation or official presentation that's on the COW agenda, but also potentially including some of ERC's thoughts in that report that goes forward, the administrative updates? Or, sorry, were you thinking about, a month as a kind of a report back that's more written as opposed to like a verbal presentation?
I think verbal presentations at times are super helpful because it's you guys presenting verbally and that puts a name to a face and keeps you top of mind. That, depending like the comfort level of the committee, how often they want to do that. I think, once or twice a year at least would be great. And then the other stuff, the committee of the whole stuff is just that goes into the package that all councilors will see that once a month. I think that's very valuable too.
Great. And I can work with you guys on getting that in. So that's something, you could submit that directly, but there is a way that I can include those in those reports.
Yeah, and you can also give that to me and then I file it in under like myself as the ERC person. So yeah, there's a process to get that in front of eyeballs.
Is it something we want to keep separate as the formal information that we say, for example, the reviews versus some of the stuff that we talked about today, keeping those two separate?
Not sure what you mean, Ken.
Okay, we did the review with Three Sisters. That's a formal review. And now we've talked about the dogs off leash. We've talked about the fruit trees, that sort of thing, which are a concern for us. Then maybe there's other things that are concerned for us, such as, field management or the carbon world. Is that something that we can do separately from the formal process?
Well, I was thinking that just like when we complete an EIS, I basically prepare a letter to council or a memo to council. There's nothing to stop us from doing another memo to council with regards to fruit trees, as an example, because that would be an advisory role, whereas the other one's a review role, but we can still communicate to council in the same way.
Yeah, there sounded like there was two processes, Amy, from what I understand. One is the informal one, where we could do a presentation to council. Then there was the more formal processes. Or am I missing something here?
No, I think that's right. Like there is a more formal process in place, but it is very specific to EIS related work.
Yeah.
So this is more of the informal, or not even informal, but what is the mechanism by which council can hear from you on items not related to EISs? So on that other side, environmental sustainability, wildlife, other issues unrelated to the EIS work.
No, it helps me understand it and clarifies it for me. Appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry if that was confusing.
Kevin, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I think, I agree. I think with Jeff, I agree with Jeff with, at least an annual presentation to council, I think would be helpful in terms of the status of the committee, what we've been doing over the last, let's say last year, or last half year. I mean, after all, we are a committee that is under the purview of the town. So I think it's incumbent of us to keep them informed as to our activities. Is that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think that, I don't want to get something buried in an annual report when we can bring it up in a more timely fashion as well.
Oh, correct. Yes. Yeah.
Great. I'm just going to capture that. So, I mean, I think the main point is that if we limit you to an annual summary, like ERC can only go in front of council once per year, unless there's an EIS. That is not desirable because one, you can't respond to timely issues, and two, there's a lot of things that could be covered and it might just be a deluge of information that'll get washed. So having the flexibility to report, present, provide information in a written way throughout the year is desired, with a minimum of a 1 year kind of appearance. That sound about what I'm hearing?
Yeah, let's go with that.
You can always add more from 1 a year, right? Things are going great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at a minimum.
A minimum.
Yeah. Once per year, and then provide ongoing kind of reports or summaries or whatever. Okay. And then one of the things that got flagged for me is that we might have to update the bylaw if we want to have a formal presentation once a year. That it may need to update the kind of the ERC bylaw. So I'll go back with these suggestions and just see, like, are we able to just do this on the ad hoc kind of more informal basis, or are we actually having to adjust the bylaw to do that? So there may be benefits of doing that, to formalize that in a bylaw that council hears from you, so that, in 3 years down the road, if it's a different committee, that's still on top of mind for people. So I don't know, we'll have to kind of flesh that out a little bit more, but I'll find out internally what the process is.
Yeah, well, we already have to propose an amendment to the bylaw to align it.
Yeah.
That's policy anyway, so throwing this in would be a good idea.
While we're at it. Okay. Does anybody have anything more to say about this one? Sorry, Jeff, did you raise your hand, or were you just moving? Okay, excellent. Great. And so the next one that I had, let me just double check here. Was to go to budget requests. So Glennis had asked about budget requests. So I just wanted to share what is going ahead from this team tomorrow. All right. There we go. So this does not include any coexisting with wildlife work. So it's really specific to the climate file. And this is really quite specific to the the capital budget request. So we have a capital budget and then an operating budget. So they're very different, kind of viewed very differently. So the requests that from the sustainability team or the climate team, me, were made for next year's budget was to do a community electric vehicle strategy and get some consulting support. So $20,000 for that. And the intent with that one is really a focus on charging infrastructure and trying to figure out how we as a town help get charging in houses, multifamily buildings, and workplaces, so that people can buy electric vehicles. So it's not about education and letting people know how great electric vehicles are. It's really about enabling or requiring charging to be built in to homes. And then the second one is this net zero building codes readiness assessment. So we have a new national model code coming. It has yet to be released by the federal government. It is late due to COVID, but this, I cannot underscore how important this code is to us, because we do not have jurisdiction over the building code. We have to follow provincial code, and the net zero ready building code coming from the federal government is aiming to get net zero buildings by 2032. So it is the most important thing that could happen for Canmore, enabling us to build better buildings. So what I have proposed is that we get ahead of this and spend some time and bring some experts in to kind of look at how we are set up now and how this new code will align with our current policies, and what we need to do to prepare for this. So how do we build the capacity? Do we need to do any process changes so that when this code comes in and gets adopted by the province, we can hit the ground running? And also, as part of that, are there kind of backup strategies or things that we should be considering in case the province delays or kind of pulls back on some of the level of aggression with the building code? So those are the two big ones kind of on the climate side. And I just wanted to say that, like, oh, wow, only $45,000, that's terrible. But this does not include all of the climate and sustainability related work that's happening and being led by other departments, which is significant. So,
there's a lot of stuff that we spend.
There's a lot of stuff happening. Yeah, I'm sure you've spent a lot of nights reading budget requests, Jeff. And
there's lots of budget stuff.
Yeah, there's lots of budget stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that's in the budget that's being led by other departments that relates. So, and namely our new fire hall, which will be pretty much a net zero building, very, very close to net zero. We're just a couple tons off, or a few tons off. So, and then one of the things too I wanted to mention too is that out of our operating budget comes some money for the biosphere to run their kind of climate change education program, which is called SHIFT. And then I didn't get wildlife coexistence stuff. Yeah, any questions about that? Awesome. Oh, Glynis, you came off mute. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question on the CEIP. Is there that's in place and operational?
Not yet. There's just no budget request for that. Yeah, we don't need a capital request for that because it's a financing mechanism. So we're actually borrowing money, but it will be paid back over time, and we're borrowing from third-party sources. So just an update on SEEP. We are awaiting to hear from FCM whether our request for capitalization funding, which is kind of the backstopping the SEEP program, through their community energy program, whatever. Anyways, they have a bazillion programs that we've applied to. So, but we're just waiting to hear back if they'll fund that. So if we're successful, we can go ahead. So basically they fund 80% of the program through a loan and a grant. And then we will get the matching funding. Likely we'll have to borrow that through our line of credit. And that's what funds kind of SEEP. So we'll get some funding, the kind of administrative and additional costs besides the actual resident borrowing the money will be covered hopefully by that FCM grant. But that's why it's not on there. So it's still happening. That's a big work plan item for me in 2022 is making that happen. And
in terms of the borrowing parts of the budget, does that show up there? Or? It's
not showing up yet.
Okay,
no,
not yet.
We might have to, do a borrowing bylaw. But I mean, it's all built into the program because we're getting it kind of back through repayment. Yeah. Any other questions? Awesome. Okay, well, we can move on then to the updates from everybody. So we had Jeff up first.
Okay, council updates, lots of things going on. I don't know if you guys have looked at the Rocky Mountain Outlook within the last little while, but the news just came public. We found out last week. TSMVPL is suing the town of Canmore and the prior council for $161 million. So that is a fascinating little thing. Follow that through. It's one of many lawsuits that TSMVPL is putting onto the town. Take from that as you will. But yes, interesting. You can check it out, Rocky Mountain Outlook, get the first little bit. Other pieces, the CAO hire. We're still in the process of hiring our new chief administrative officer. And there was a little bit of consternation from some groups where they're like, they saw the job description and there were not specifically, like, people are like, well, they should have, like, whoever we hire should have direct experience implementing climate change initiatives, et cetera. And from that, our response as a council, this is a huge priority for us to get someone in as a new CEO that has, an incentive and a desire to move forward with climate goals and move forward with actual initiatives. But we were counseled by our hiring group that we only picked, and if we got too specific with those sort of things, it would just shrink the net of who we could get, right? So, obviously, as we go through the interview process and we filter through the resumes, that will be a huge piece what we're looking for, the desire and the ability to move forward, and hopefully proven track record with climate stuff. But yeah, that's what's going on there. So do not feel, if you are hearing from the community that the CAO is not going to be driven towards climate initiatives, or they're being hired without a sense of focus towards that, that's not true. It's a big piece. Other things coming down that are quite interesting. Lots going on in Canmore. The train. We as ERC might have to ponder some of those things. Having said that, from Banff to Calgary, it's a fascinating thing because much like the Olympics, we are directly impacted, but we don't really have a lot of leverage or say on the yes or no of the decision. I feel our impression right now is the two big decision makers on if the train are going to work is really a Calgary-Banff brokered deal. And they're just trying to work, the proponent there, the Wateresses, are working through all their steps to try and make it happen. So some people are like, well, what's council's perspective? And council's perspective is, as I echoed before, we don't really have leverage on if it's a yes or no, because we don't have say on that. And so then the next piece for us is we need to work from a situation where if a train does happen, and there's a possibility that it can, we need to position the town in its best way possible if it does happen. Because we could go the other way and say, we're not in support of a train, but if a train comes through and we're not at the table for the conversations for what that means, that actually impacts us. Because whether we like it or not, we are looking at increased train traffic if this project comes in. Easily, 10 trains back and forth. That's that affects us in a lot of ways. You can look at it from the wildlife interaction side of piece, whether we're going to have more collisions, interactions there. Environmentally, I'm just giving you guys a quick, high level thing. There is a lot of talk from proponents selling this project as it's being good from a climate perspective. And possibly if the trains are powered from a hydrogen perspective, which is kind of one of the sexy selling features, if that's the case, then yeah, there is probably going to be a benefit for greenhouse gases. If the train project runs through and the hydrogen trains don't show up right away and you do it with diesel, is actually, we're actually worse off. Okay, so that's something to consider. There's also a lot of talk about how this will minimize road traffic coming into the valley. And that's actually, that's going to come out in the wash. If you check out some of the articles, the current proposal right now is if you are a local, so I'm assuming that's Albertan, it's $20 to ride the train each way. And if you're a family, you got a family of four, we're talking $80 each way, $160 round trip. I think for a lot of people as a family, I don't think the numbers make sense. Why spend $160 and all the logistics of getting to a train station when you could drive your own car for a round trip, $30 sort of thing. And then when it comes to out of towners, they're saying $40. Okay. So again, if you're looking at a family perspective, I don't think a family is necessarily going to spend $320 to do a round trip to Banff and back when they could probably, car rental might look a little more attractive. In the past, what happens, town of Canmore's position has been the train is an interesting idea. We do see there's potential merit. However, if you're looking to get, more easy benefit more quickly, continue to work with trains, but have them, or sorry, not trains, buses, and go from a hydrogen bus perspective. But hydrogen buses just aren't as sexy and as exciting as trains. So, which brings us back to this whole train thing. So I'm just flagging to you guys, this might be something that we'll have to take a look at, right? And not from a perspective of yes or no, but how do we mitigate impacts, our concerns, and those issues as well. There's a lot of unknowns to that. The proponent will have you believe that this project is a definite go by 2025. And so in like 3.5 years, trains will be going back and forth. That's the proponent speaking. I think there are other issues coming up. Stony Nakota, they are probably not as enamored about, CP Rail putting another line through their lands. And, there's the money piece as well. It's there's a lot going on. I was just curious if you guys had any thoughts about the train.
Jeff, what's the timeline on this? Like in terms of, like you say by 2025, but in terms of an assessment or when it's going to come before council and as a actual proposal?
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't really come before us. It just happens. They did it, like seriously. That's how it works. CP Rail, they own the line. If they have an agreement with the proponent to say, hey, you can run trains on the line. We can't actually stop that. So council's perspective is, if it does happen, how do we get on this? Such as, getting a station set up. If we do put a station within Canmore, this again could be falling under ERC side of things. What's a good place to put the said train in such a way that it minimizes environmental impacts? And then it just snowballs from there, from like if a train station comes in, intercept parking, transportation, wildlife, etc. But yeah, it could come as fast as 2025, according to proponent. That would be pretty quick, but you never know. Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
Jeff, is it a bullet train?
Well, it's a hydrogen train that makes it look fast. I don't know if it's anything like comes from Japan, like one of those, little snub nose things that go super quick. Operationally, I think one of the big pieces is that I think one of the big drivers from the Calgary side of things is they're really, really keen to have a train to go from the airport to the downtown. And right now they're proposing that train will go from the airport downtown back and forth every 15 minutes. And then 10 times a day, trains would shoot all the way out to Banff and back. We're not the only municipality that's kind of in the same situation here. Cochrane is in the same situation as us, where they're like, they don't really have a say if the train happens, yes or no, but they would be motivated to be at the table so that if a train does happen, they can actually address their concerns and try to, get a station. Same thing, Stony Dakota. Like they are also potentially slated to have a stop in Morley, but Stony Dakota, they are in a different situation. They haven't attended the roundtable meetings that the other municipalities have gone to, so they are speaking at a different level. So yeah, that's another piece.
Yeah, is there another, we're just thinking of the intersection on Railway Avenue and the impacts of train traffic now. If you're increasing that by, 10 more, what is
20 more.
is there anything going to be done with that?
Yeah.
It's an ugly mess potentially.
Sorry, could you say the last part again, Ken?
I said it potentially could be an ugly mess with 10 additional trains coming through, traffic. It just, this potentially overpass if they're using the same lines. I don't know enough about it, but I see it being a real issue for traffic in this community.
I agree 110%. It is a massive, massive issue. When it comes to things such as overpasses, they're really expensive, incredibly expensive, even also geographically. I don't think we could put an overpass in by Elevation Place there. So maybe there's talk of maybe you could put an overpass further downstream where the visitor center is. But then, that begs the question, is that the ideal spot for a station? If you put a station there, and then who pays for it? Which is the next piece as well. Tons and tons of concerns for sure. Yeah. But we can't say no, even if we don't like it, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. if you really like the downtown, you should live on the downtown side. This is what I'm saying right now. Yeah, other pieces coming down the pipe is, I think, moving forward. We do have some big projects coming down for town. I think palliative care will be coming forth with their proposal. And I think there might be a request to change the urban growth boundary to facilitate their project. That's a potential thing. Just flagging you guys, that would be in. I have to take the most recent look at when those guys are coming forward with their presentation. But, you know, we might have to, if there is an EIS or stuff like that, or maybe ERC would like to put their input in on that. That will be in earlier part of 2022.
We already reviewed an EIS last year, or this year, I think it was, regarding the palliative care. It was part of a bigger development.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So that was before me. Okay. Yeah, so that will be coming forth for all those pieces.
That was the South Canmore, wasn't it, Bob?
Yep.
Yeah, South Canmore, and you'll probably see our report.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so lots happening with the town. Yeah, check out the Outlook. See the article. 161
Thank you.
million prior
Oh my
councils.
gosh, 161 million.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time to do that. It's really great to hear because you have the view. I do not have this view. of
Yeah,
everything
no
that's
worries.
going
And
on.
if you guys have questions, like feel free to contact me or call me outside or fire me an email. I'm happy to talk, you know, outside the context of here too. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to go based on my screen and pick on people. So, Kevin, do you have any updates or roundtable things that you would like to share?
After I get myself unmuted, no, I'm sorry, I don't, but I'll keep it in mind for next time for sure.
Mhm.
One thing I did, maybe Jeff, although just thinking now about the train situation. Do you know how many trains per day? No? Do you have any idea?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
because so in addition to the freight trains, with the what's the latest with the Rocky Mountaineers? Has it been stopped during COVID? I'm sorry, I've lost track.
I think it still runs. Yeah, because like I was at Lake Louise like a couple of weeks ago, and I thought I saw people affiliated with the Rocky Mountaineer.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it'll be.
but still adding another 10 round trips a day on a passenger train from Calgary to Banff is going to
Oh yeah.
significantly
There's
increase
definitely-
traffic. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the wildlife impacts is something I think we need to be cognizant of, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks.
Yeah,
problem.
thanks. And then, yeah, just so you know too, like anytime, every meeting we put a little round table thing in. So, and anybody's welcome to bring anything forward. Glynis.
I don't have anything tonight.
Great. Bob, anything additional?
No, I'm good this time.
Okay.
Ken.
No, I'm good. I think I've spoken up enough tonight. Thanks.
Right. Ralph, how are you doing down there?
I'm just parked in a car here, so listening, and I'm just glad
Thank
to be
you.
back on the committee, and I don't have anything to add at this point. So some interesting topics for sure, though.
Yeah, and thanks for making it. And I know that it didn't work with your work schedule, and appreciate you pulling over on the side of the road so you could listen to us in your car. So I hope you're warm.
Yeah, very warm. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Okay, I just had a couple quick things to add. One is that I am scheduled to present at the committee of the whole meeting to council, and the intention is to get the new council hasn't heard from me or anything about climate action so far. So the intention is to kind of bring them up to date on where things are at, what's been done. It'll be a giant report. Look forward to that one, Jeff.
What time are you on?
Yeah, January, whatever. It's that January meeting.
Okay.
I think it's only, I have to present in half an hour, but there's a bunch of content. So it's to kind of say where things are at, what the plan is, work plan for 2022, status of all our climate action plan actions. So I'll send that out to you guys all once it gets posted live so you can have a look. And again, it's no decisions being asked. It's just a committee of the whole meeting, which is information. So Ken, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Just the number of points that we brought up, and then you're typing some additional notes. Is that for our benefit, or is that something we want to present to council going forward?
So these ones will be captured in the minutes and help us in our future, because a lot of the notes that we made tonight were like forming future discussions. And so for now, it's just internal. I'll take some of the things that I can take up through our bosses, and I'll continue to work on, for example, the memo for the EIS, but there's nothing that's going to council in the notes that we took in this meeting. And then, yeah, and I don't think any of the stuff that we discussed necessarily is part of the climate action plan update, because the stuff I'm coming is really specific to our climate action plan status and our current inventory. The other thing that's happening is we're also participating in the Circular Cities and Regions initiative. So I think Lori probably mentioned it at a previous meeting, maybe back when it was the old committee. So what that is it's being led by a few different groups, the Canada Zero Waste Council and Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Recycling Council of Alberta, and it's a network of Canadian cities kind of across the country, coast to coast to coast, who are kind of a cohort and working through circular economy strategies. So the outcome is supposed to be a circular economy roadmap, and this will be interesting to ERC because it will be yet another strategy that's kind of guiding this work, and we'll have to figure out how this one kind of fits in, and it's really relevant to the discussion about the Environmental Sustainability Action Plan, because that one will be it's kind of cross-cutting. Like it's not just waste. So circular economy, a lot of times people kind of equate it to recycling, but it's much broader. It's about the sharing economy and food waste reduction, and there's implications for planning and car sharing and different things like that, and tool libraries and whatnot. So there's a bunch of things that could come out of that. So and how that kind of sits with the rest of our strategies. So this will be a future work kind of discussion. So we're kind of in the early stages of that work. So that's one thing that's happening. And then also I've teamed up with the manager of community social development, and we've put in a kind of an expression of interest to participate in an initiative coming from the Tamarack Institute, and it's focused on like a just and equitable climate transition. And we're participating, or there's not going to be a specific kind of piece of work or a strategy that comes out of this, but it's more of kind of learning for us as staff, and as we go forward with our climate action planning, how to make sure that we're putting a social justice and equity lens on our work to achieve multiple benefits, and not just kind of narrow-mindedly focus on the environmental ones. So that's kind of the supportive work that we're getting as opposed as part of this initiative that Tamarack has. And again, this is a network of cities across Canada that will be participating in this. So that's kind of it for me for the time being. All right, anybody else want to jump in or have any questions about anything that I brought up? All right, so on that, we can schedule the January meeting if you guys can throw in a few dates. Waverly did send me the ones that worked for her best, and then I can also look at Sally's calendar as we're doing this. So I just wanted to check in too, because Ralph, like I know that you got held up at work. So if this 4 to 6 like time slot doesn't work, we can shift it back a little bit. We just have to end by 6:30. So we could do 4:30 to 6:30 if that's better. Or look at another option. So let me just pull up the calendar here. So we could be January 10th, January 7th, if you want to stay with the Monday, like January 10th or 17th.
I'm thinking the 17th, just because, with Christmas and everything else,
Yeah.
an extra week wouldn't hurt to push it to the 17th.
Available the 17th. I'm not available the 10th.
Okay. Sally. Oh, yeah, Sally has something at 5, but she might be able to come for the first little bit. So that would probably work for that. And then let me just double check with Waverly. Yeah, she can do the 17th.
That was
should be
way
good too.
easy.
Is that okay? And then Ralph, do you want to start later? Do you want to start at 4:30 or can you do 4?
No, I think we can go with 4. This was kind of an urgent thing that, yeah, I just had to tend to. So.
Okay.
And 17th is fine. So.
Okay. All good for everybody?
That's good.
Yeah, barring any like powder days. I know that as Ken said, unless I'm skiing, I'll be there.
Outer day may take priority, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do we have a rule
that's
like
what we booked
15
4
centimeter?
o'clock, guys.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like I was skiing POW at the lake like last week, and it's all done by like 12:30.
It's true. That's why we don't have morning meetings.
Exactly. That's why we put these. Like you can totally get a powder day and be back for 4.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We are accommodating. All right. Okay. I'm just going to flag a couple things that I was hoping to add to the agenda next time. One, I realize we have to vote on a vice chair. So, and I would prefer to do that when everybody can make it, but we need a vice to Bob. And that would be to act as chair when you're unavailable. And then what are the other jobs of the vice chair, Bob? Do you remember?
Can't remember, no.
Yeah, I know it's signing off on the minutes when you can't sign off on them and chairing when you're not here. I think those were the main 2. So if anybody wants to put their name forward, we'd love to have you. So we'll have to vote on that next time. And then the other thing that I wanted to add on the agenda for next time, and I'll throw out to you guys to think about, is that I was modeling our agenda off of the council agenda. And I realized that at the beginning of their agendas, they do a land acknowledgement. So we haven't been, and I think that we should. So I wanted to add that to the agendas, but I had a proposal that in the spirit of truth and reconciliation and our continued learning, that we take turns to do that. So every meeting, somebody else takes on the land acknowledgement, and you can be make it as meaningful as you would like for yourself. So I wanted to throw that out there, but if you're uncomfortable with that, please email me. I don't want to call you out and put you on the spot if this is something that is a bit nerve-wracking for you. Go ahead, Jeff.
Can we like designate it so like everybody knows who it's going to be?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a little more like,
yeah,
we'll get
not
better.
just surprise somebody. It's your turn.
We'll get way better, more meaningful land acknowledgements.
Yeah. No. We would have a schedule. Like my proposal would be like to have a schedule and then to have it back. Like I could be the backup. Like if you can't make the meeting at the last minute, to have a backup. But that's my proposal. So I wanted to kind of throw that out there.
No, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, but please do email me if you're not comfortable with that, and we can figure out the workaround. Okay, well, instead of putting on the agenda for next meeting, why don't I'll just do a land acknowledgement next meeting. I'll put it on the agenda as a thing we do, and then we'll discuss a schedule and what we'll do going forward next time. Which includes giving advance notice. Okay, thank you for participating. Okay, well, I think we're good.
Okay, so I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Kevin, thank you. Meeting is adjourned.